Okay, so what was supposed to be on this picture was a picture like of a larger altar space, but we're here, it's fine. You know, technology didn't want me to be great today, but it's fine. So I want us to start, we're talking about like herbalism, root work, that type of vibe today. So we kind of have to start with like what that looks like and where we come from, which is why we started with the story of Jackson, aka the founding of Foxglove. And it looks like people who like go by grandmother or mima or tanti or mom, cuandera, medicine people, medicine person, medicine woman, iya, baba, root workers, bush people, bush woman, bushman, obeya. Um, then we have our midwives, our nurses, our friends, the witches, the shamans, the two-headed doctors, and herbalists, which myself and a lot of other people on this call probably are too. And honestly, in my opinion, most people and your families and your grandmothers especially could probably call themselves that if they wanted to. This is where we come from. And I think when we talk, when we have conversations about like herbalism or root work or things like this, we go way far out and we don't like focus in on this is something that fairly recently has become like a thing people would identify as or a thing that people would go to school to pursue. Because if we go back a couple generations, a couple hundred years, everybody's family had somebody who knew how to cure an illness. Most people in the family had somebody in their house who could cure an illness with an XYZ herb, plant, root, flower, yada, 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 a prayer. We all had these in our cribs. It wasn't until things like, you know, and the industrial shit happened and a bunch of other things happened where we started to see like bigger separations from land, bigger separations from these knowledges and like devaluing where we come from in terms of like, oh, hey, this person is having a really, really hard time mentally. Why don't we like give them some lemon balm? Why don't we like create some cool stuff with like a mugwort or another type of thing? Like it's been fairly recent that like these things have been separate from us. And we thankfully in the like the millennial and the Gen Z generations have been working really hard to like come back into right relationship with our wisdom traditions. So if we're going to have any conversation about herbalism, we have to say thank you to all these people. I want to pause real quick and hear like, does anybody have any memories or stories of like one of these folks in your life and maybe what they have shown you when you were younger or presently, or like, oh, I heard this word shaman in a TV show and I always wondered XYZ, or I related to that character or whatever. I would just like to hear like, does anybody have any memories or recollections or just things they want to share?
And again, just a gentle reminder, you can either answer in the chat box, or if you feel comfortable, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself as well.
I just want to say that I'm dead at Bushwoman because as a person that had wild, unmanageable hair as a child, that was like my nickname, and I'm living for it in this day of things.
Thank you, Ash. We hear you. Daulton, I would like to say, I've never heard the term two-headed doctor before. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So in Conjure Hoodoo tradition, so African-American folk religion, a two-headed doctor basically like it's a title for somebody who works with the both and. So they work with like the human body, right? And they're like, okay, cool, this person got liver issues, da 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 da. Like, let me help this out. But also like we know that liver is where anger lives. We know where that liver can be, that we need to get like the dandelions and the other situations like that. to
Hmm.
support. We work with both the physical and the otherworldly to basically cause healing, to basically facilitate healing in the body. So yeah, that's a two-headed doctor.
Word up. Thank you.
Period. Thank you. But yeah, are there any other questions people might have about any of these words? Some are definitely missing. There's a lot that are missing, but yeah. Okay, cool. So we're gonna move
Hello?
on. Oh, hi. Who is it?
Hi, sorry. I was gonna ask, do you have any research or let's say content where one could learn more about contact different people from different areas, such as, doulas, midwives, curanderas, baba, ovea, herbalists, and stuff like that? 'Cause usually when one looks that up, there's like, oh, join this program, or had certification here, or go to this other country, but in general, more of like a dictionary, to find these people around, or to learn, at least to be able to learn about these people and their practices as well.
That's a great question, Carlos. It looks like Daulton is on it.
Sorry, I had to like read this. One of my faves is like work. Oh, you can't see it. Wait, okay, can you? 1 second. Technology is still a hater. I think we're still in Mercury retrograde. All right. No.
No, it's
Okay. What about now?
little bit.
It's a book called Work in the Roots by Michelle E. Lee. I'll have us email it to you. It's really, really good, especially if you're looking into like African American like healing traditions. She does a great job like talking to like elders and like going into like different recipes, like what do you use for like mosquito repellent, inflammation, and other things like that. I would totally tap into that. But yeah, there's books, but also like, I don't know if you have the privilege of having older people in your family. I would automatically start there and talk to them and see like, we'll talk about it in actually maybe two two slides or so, like more, but I would tap into the elders in your family. And then if you email me, I can like connect you to some things.
Thank you so much.
Sure. If I might, there we go, the cute one. Okay. So with that, are there any more before we transition? Oh, perfect. Thank you, Jamie. Yes, yes. And I think actually we're going to talk about another one right now with the Petty Herbalist. I think we should definitely check out the Petty Herbalist podcast. It's an amazing podcast with two dope-ass Black female herbalists named Karina as well as Asia. And I have to thank them so much for like giving me this really good framework to work with when explaining like herbalism, because before this workshop, I was very like, okay, we could sit here for 6 hours or more and talk about every single thing in the world, but like, how can we make it helpful? Also, if I cough, I've been having a lot of allergies going on right now, so we're just gonna flow. And if I take a break, we're just gonna take a break, just to be honest. What is the chat saying? I mean, look, it was really good. So yeah, we have 1 second. So yeah, the Petty Herbalist podcast, I will pause my screen share real quick and then put in the link to the actual episode. Because I think everybody should listen to it, especially if like you're trying to learn more about like where you fit in and maybe like what herbal things you want to tap into to support your development, or like what's going on. So put it in the chat.
What I'll do also on my end, Daulton, is I will save the chat and all the resources that folks provide. I'll put them in a document and we can share them at the next session. Or I can email them out to everyone as well, however you prefer.
Okay, is the screen back up? And can people hear me?
Yes and yes.
Okay, thank God. Okay, cool. That got a little nerve-wracking. But yeah, so in with the three healing traditions, we have scientific, heroic, and the wise woman tradition. Tradition. Um, and yeah, so the way that I understood it, and Karina, if you know, please, put it in the chat if you want to add more details, that's totally welcome. We have like these three traditions of healing, and I think the coolest part about it is like, it isn't like it's not a trinary system, it's not like, oh, we are only using scientific at one moment. We are only using heroic. We are only using the wise woman. A lot of our remedies, a lot of the things that we do to heal flow somewhere in between all of them. So it's not like, you know what I mean? So with scientific, we're looking at like what a lot of people in like woo-woo circles and spaces are like, no, I don't like Western medicine. Western medicine is trash. Doctors are trash. And I too agree on a lot of days, because a lot of them are really mean to people who have different things going on. But that's kind of what the scientific is. It has diagnoses, it has surgeries where you actually physically take things and remove them and do all that situation. Drugs, like we talked about, digoxin. So we see in the first story how we're using multiple methods, how we started with a literal wise woman and then we're guided into the scientific of it all. But also the main doctor, William Withering, also was firmly planted in the heroic of it all before it became an actual drug. You can think of the scientific tradition as something that measures and fixes. So like when you go to the doctor, you get your blood pressure, you measure it. Okay, cool. Wrong. We got to give homie some blood pressure medication. You know what I mean? There's standards and numbers, BMI, all that kind of stuff. These are all things that live within the scientific tradition. And I feel like that's a tradition that we're all pretty acquainted with. So to move forward, we have the heroic tradition. From the way that I understand it, it feels very evangelical. It feels very much like a system where there are goods and there are bads, where it feels very evangelical. It feels where there's a system where there was definitely like goods and bads. It is binary. There is like okay, cool, we are going to purify you by taking out all the toxins in your body. That type of vibe. So we have cleansing, we have a good fast. It's very Goopian, very like Gwyneth Paltrow in its roots a little bit. And it centers the practitioner or the nurse or ex-person as the healer versus yourself or your spirit or anything like that. That's kind of like where this tradition is. Let me look at the chart really briefly. It is very Goopian. Like it's very Goopian in its methods. And then we have the wise woman tradition. So we're thinking about like, I think Karina said in the podcast, you are whole and complete. We're thinking about things that nourish our wholeness, supplying the body with nourishing herbs and food. So we're thinking like, hey, instead of like giving you some blood pressure medication, why don't we like hit you up with like that hibiscus infusion every morning? Why don't we like get you some sweet potatoes? Why don't we do some other things that help lower and like control the blood and all the stuff like that? We're thinking about things that like are consistently hitting you with the like, oh damn, I feel good. Oh, I'm gonna be really great today. That's kind of like where we're going with the wise woman tradition. And this is kind of where like a lot of our ancestors come from. Yeah. Yeah. This is what we're thinking. But to go back to like nothing is like trinary. In this workshop series alone, we've hit every single one of these. We've talked about like the literal medical industrial complex and how like a lot of our understandings of like how to work with the physical heart come from the space. And like, yes, the wise woman tradition is great, but like you might need a pacemaker. You might need an ablation. You might need these other like surgical interventions to support your physical heart. Just as like, your doctor might say like, hey, how can we bring in some of these like annoyingly goopian things to like help you increase your heart health, as well as like, oh, I got my infusions, I got my motherwort infusion, I got my rose tea going on, I got all these different things to help me support my heart on its day-to-day basis. So like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. None of them are useless. All of them have reasons for being. So I want us to make sure as we're like going into like herbalism, whether we're new or old to it, we're not like demonizing one thing over the other, especially because like myself and other people, all of us have somebody in our family who like might need another thing to survive. And does that feel clear? Oh yes, color there. Yeah, that's right. I'm like keep reading the chat. Yeah, that feels clear. Does anyone have any thoughts or like examples? Does anyone have any examples of the wise woman tradition in their life? Thank you, Ash. Ash said aromatherapies and healing with smells. Hell yeah.
Hi, Daulton. I'll pop in. I'm Karina, also petty herbalist. And I think a good wise woman tradition is like a parent or a guardian, whoever's taking care of you, making you dinner every night, making sure that the refrigerator is stocked, like that kind of thing, just making sure you're nourished on a daily basis and you're fed and you're well. I think that's very wise woman.
Thank you so much. Also follow the Petty Herbalist podcast. I am a petty herbalist evangelist. It's never gonna stop. Yeah. Does anybody have any examples of the heroic tradition? I know I gave one with saying goop, but like, does anybody have any other examples of like what might be a heroic intervention that you or someone in your life may have used?
I'll say, I think just today I'm like having a really annoying cold right now that I'm trying to get over. I love to let my intuition and kind of ancestral guide throw random herbs inside of a bathtub to expel shit. And it'll get weird. It gets real, just like it's like real magical and mystical, and I love it. It's like one of my go-tos for sure, especially if things are not thanging the way they should.
Thank you. I feel that. And I think also like a timely example is like, I don't know if you all remember like a couple years ago when Beyonce woke us up at like 7 a.m. to tell us to do like a juice cleanse with like cayenne pepper and lemon and all of that. That's very in like the heroic tradition, shout out to the Renaissance tour starting today, but also she really played us. And then her intermittent like veganism was a lot for all of us.
For me, I want to share because I feel like when I first got into herbalism, I was like on like psych meds and I was getting pressured to like stop taking those because they're just like, oh, like you need your body to be this like pure temple and natural only, da 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 da. And I'm just like, a lot of the medications are still made like from natural substances. But like, yeah, very much being in like some of these spaces where they're just like, there is like the way, our Lord and Savior herbs only. you know.
Yes, thank you so much, Ade. Yes. We're for time, we're gonna move forward. And I just want you to like think real quick. Who are your plant ancestors? So like literally exactly what the word looks like. Like, what are your plant ancestors? You know what I mean? Because we don't just come from human beings. Like, in order for us to be here, somebody had to eat something, somebody had to touch water, somebody had to burn it up in a fire, somebody had to breathe. You know what I mean? A lot of other entities, a lot of other like things brought us here today. So I just want you to like take a moment and think like, reach back and who are those herbs? So what are those herbs, those plants, those flowers, that roots were like in your life, in your kitchens, in your backpacks on a daily, consistent, more consistent basis growing up? And feel free to like put them in the chat box as like you are bringing them up with you. Okay, chamomile. Onions, yes. Sorry. Yes. Lavender. Mint, elderberry, lemongrass. Spearmint, yes. Cinnamon, ginger, apples, ooh, apple butter, apple toast, that sounds delicious. And were there any specific, like maybe like teas, dishes, remedies, first aid kind of products that like y'all would like use them with? Specifically, like Ash just said, like they would put onions in their socks. Do you want to say like maybe what that was used for?
You know, I can't really source exactly where this ideation came from, but you know, it feels like it's pulling, like a lot of things are coming from our feet, and the feet, obviously our hands and feet have a lot of pressure points, a lot of all of that. So it just feels like, you know, things going into the ground, just encouraging it with the onion as like the catalyst to pull things that are like not helpful. Not that all the toxins are bad, but there are some bad toxins that need to go ASAP. So.
Thank you so much. My mom, my grandma made us do that too. She made us do it with potatoes too. And I was like, this is just very strange and gross. I also think I saw Devoya put in some for cramps, dried peach leaves steeped in a pot. Can you explain that? I've never heard of that.
So when my sisters and me were little, we would always see our aunties go to the backyard, get some peach leaves, steep them in a pot. Well, you dry them out, you steep them in a pot, you make a little tea, you add a little honey. We always thought, oh, we can't wait till we grow up to do that. And then we realized later on it was for cramps. So when we all started, they would have us drink it too. And it actually works. It's not delicious, but we got a peach tree in the back at work here. And I've been known to go out there and get some leaves on occasion because I'm grown now and I do what I'm supposed to do.
I love you, Devoya. I'm done. Okay. Well, we're gonna keep these in mind, especially as like, you know, you're going through life. Like, you know, you've identified some of them. You've identified some of your plant ancestors. So like when you're working with them, when like you're cooking with them, like give thanks, give honor, say thank you to it. Like, hey, ginger, hey, thyme, hey, turmeric, hey, spearmint, like you've been rocking with me for a really long time and I would not be here without you. So like, how can I also support your growth and development as a plant, as a living being on this planet? Maybe it looks like giving you a pot and some soil and water and growing some. Or maybe it looks like helping the people who are growing that plant have healthy lives, you know? So with that, we're gonna move forward. We're gonna hit this quickly because I wanna make sure people have time for at least one of our closing activities. So when we're thinking about like herbalism in like the heart space, we're thinking like shout out again to our Chinese elders, our Chinese ancestors who like have done a lot of work, and also our many indigenous folks across the globe who have done a lot of work understanding like the heart and the heart space before we had quote unquote Western medicine and like all the things we have now to like actually look inside of the heart. they knew what was tea. They were like, look, this is fiery. I got heartburn. I don't know what's going on, but I know it's right here. They knew those situations. They also knew that like there was a connection between like the gut space and the heart, which like we see when there's a lot of like deficiencies or like there is certain things that are impacting the way that the heart is able to move physically. We see that people can actually have like a lot of gut problems and a lack of like expulsion from their bowels and other things that are connected to the belly to the heart. So, and then anyway, we talked about all that, but more specifically, I think we should talk about like how the spiritual connection of the heart. So we see that the heart is like the lovey-dovey space. We have a whole month catered to like loving people and loving things and dealing with heartbreak and dealing with loss, especially when it comes to like the winter season when we deal with lots and lots of loss. We also see a lot of people deal with lots and lots of heart issues that are connected to like the darkness and all those things. But when we think about the heart as an engine, so it's a place that things move to and from and outside and back and whatever. When we have heartbreak, when we have heartache, it's gonna cause a blockage. It's gonna cause reduced flow. It's gonna cause, you know, a hitch in the giddy up of the heart engine, which then could lead to things like dropsy, what we talked about earlier. It could lead to things like fluid buildup, fluid retention. It could lead to things like stagnant emotions that make it to where we just can't get over X thing, you know what I mean? Those are all things that these are all issues that live in the heart space. And when we think about like that hitch in the giddy up and not allowing water, blood to move through, we're also looking at how that might impact the kidneys. So bringing it to the physical, going to this back to the scientific tradition, a lot of people when they have heart deficiencies, be it heart failure, be it like, but there's tons and tons and tons, but issues with the heart, it can lead to deficiencies in the kidneys, which could eventually lead to kidney failure or liver failure, because the kidneys are our oceans of the body, and it's where we're able to process these things that then allow the blood to turn into pee, and then we can expel, blah, 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 blah. But if your heart is having an issue processing things and letting things go, you might not be peeing a lot. You might have weird feelings around that area where it's like, damn, I don't know what's going on. Is my stomach? What's going on? I'm feeling like lots of heaviness, especially if you get in water and you're like, why does my stomach hurt? Why is it painful? You probably have there's probably fluid buildup there because your heart isn't in a space to where it's able to process all these things, which is where things like gingers are really, really good to help us circulate things through the body. It can also be associated with like chi stagnancy. But yeah, does that feel clear? Because I know we like would jump through a bunch of things. Yeah. So a couple herbs that are good for that are these. We've talked, if you have the zine, there's like breakdowns in the zine of like at least motherwort, hawthorn, ginger, cacao, rose, and hibiscus. There's like breakdowns of like everything that they do and how they can help you. Right. Yes. How they can help you in all the different like constituents and their whole plant profile, or at least a good chunk of their plant profile. It's in the zine. I suggest you get that. It's in my Instagram bio. And we're also going to be giving some out too. We'll talk about that at the end, okay? Because I want to make sure we get to something. But yeah, these are all super, super great herbs. We will, again, at the end of the whole entire series, we'll send out every single one of these PowerPoints and you'll have all the information for as long as, you know, the internet exists. Yeah. And with that, I think we have time. Ugh, we have time, maybe not five. Do folks want a 5-minute break? Or do you want to go into our activity? Can I get some thumbs up or pluses with the?
I suggest the activity only because we still want to pull the raffle prize for folks. So maybe while you're setting up your activity that I can do that for you. Would that work?
Yeah, if folks already have your tea ready, Or if you need
Oh.
to warm up the water, do that. Or if you don't have that, we can do the other thing too. It's fine. Either way is fine. Actually, probably the other thing. We can do the thing now and then we'll flow. We'll flow. We're gonna flow. We're gonna flow.
I don't know what the thing is, babe.
Flower essences.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna make a flower essence. It's not like the Angela Bassett situation, but okay. Okay, do you want to do the raffle?
If that works with what you're working with, I don't want to interrupt. It's such a small thing. We can do it at the very end. I think
Okay.
it's go Team Daulton right now.
I'm done. Okay, let's do it. So let's talk quick story time. Story time. Anyway, the story of red roses. So the origin, and at least in like Greek myth, of the red rose comes from Aphrodite and her lover, Adonis. Anyway, shout out to Drake. So it comes from these two. It comes from these two being in love. We have Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and all the other things, right? So turns out, I'm trying to remember, was it Hades or another hater? Long story short, there was another god who was a hater, right? He was a hater. He was like, hey, look, you're never gonna have somebody as good as me. Adonis is not that girl. You know you want me. I am that person for you. And she was like, no, like, it's just never gonna be you. It will always be Adonis. Adonis is my boy. So turns out, homie sets up Adonis, right? It's very messy, very, very messy. So homie sets up Adonis to come back, to basically come back from war and get God. So Adonis comes back, he's living his best life. Turns out somebody was like, oh, got you, slip in, I got you. And Adonis gets stabbed. Adonis is bleeding, Adonis is about to die. Aphrodite is like, something's going on in the weather. My man is wrong. Something's wrong with my man. So then she is like running and running and running to go find Adonis. She peeps game like, oh, homie actually set my man up and this isn't okay. So she's running and running and running to help Adonis. She finds Adonis in a pool of blood. Homie dead. The man that she loved, dead, gone, deceased. And next thing you know, as she's like over him crying, red roses start to come out of the blood. So we see bushes and bushes and bushes of red roses begin to fill up this beach area. And that is where, you know, the origin of red roses come from. So when we think of them, you know, shout out to Adonis, we should always say like, F the haters, because a hater brought us red roses, you know? So that's the origin of red roses. And when we think, this was going to be for another activity, but we're fine. When we think of roses, not just red roses, all these things pop up. This is like the one side is more the spiritual attributes. The other side is more of like the physical, scientific. I think for myself personally, like roses came into my life when I was like super lonely in high school and like was just dealing with a lot of stuff. My grandmother died and I just started like getting into like baths. Not like, let me rephrase that. Because I just started getting into physical baths, like sitting in a bathtub versus not bathing. That's different. But I started getting into like baths and all of that. And I was like, oh, this is great. I don't know why I never did this before. And then I started like, oh, I can put flowers in this bath. So I started taking like rose baths in high school. And it was just like, it really helped like nourish my heart during that season, because I was just like super lonely, things were going on, dealing with like getting out of school and just all this kind of stuff and like loss and transition. And Rose like held me down. Like, you know, it did help me feel like I could process my grief and my heartbreak. It did help me feel like I wasn't as angry, you know, as somebody who's a little hot all the time. It really helped cool me down. So when I found out like, oh, spiritually, this is what roses do, I was like, oh, I can validate that. Like, that makes sense. What I didn't know, however, it was like with phrases like, oh, go smell the roses. Like, yes, they're corny as fuck. And when we think about like the energy of roses, it is one of the highest vibrating things in the planet. And it does help to, like, you know, bring up your frequency. So when people literally, that's why I put that at the beginning, because I was like, oh, roses, roses. Anyway, yes, thank you so much, Carlos. But yeah, when we think about like, hey, go smell the roses, like people are actually like, hey, like, you know, if you go smell these, you're gonna feel better. Go and smell them. Go lift up your vibes, you know? And then when, you know, things went left and I started having heart issues, I was like, oh, give me all the roses in the world, because I didn't know I was hanging around with like this thing that would help me. I didn't know this thing like had all these different like vitamins and all these different like nervines and all these different things that would like actually help to tonify and like make my heart a space that is like suitable for living. I didn't know that. So for me, roses are something that's like a foundational tool, a foundational homie, best friend that like we're never gonna separate because you've always had my back, even before I knew I needed to. Does anybody have any stories of like roses in your life? I think we have time for 2 people. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing that. That sounds amazing. Okay, we're gonna move forward. But yeah, so that's a little about roses. And to finish us off today, we are gonna make, I'm gonna show you flower essence. I let them like sit for the morning before this. So yeah, we'll just do this. So let's go through this. So basically flower essences is like a fun way to work with roses. All right, let me get the chat. Why isn't it letting me look at the chat? Oh yeah. So basically it's like a fun way to work with rose medicine. Similar to like a spritz, but more spiritual and intentional. What we do is like you alchemize your intentions with plant material, aka flowers, with water and the sun. They all come together, creating this like tea-ish thing that you mix with alcohol to help preserve it, to help you just like say, for instance, when I was helping my cousin and I was a caretaker, like before I walked into every single like session to like help her out, like I was like dousing myself. I was like, I need all the rose essence material to like really sit into like my subtle body, to sit into my cells, to sit into like the me that I can't see, to help me breathe and calm down and get through this thing. This is where flower essences help in. It's also, they're really, really helpful in times of like stress to help you ground, but also like a lot of people have used them during like intense rehabilitation programs to help uplift the spirits of like different patients or whatever they're using, whatever they're going through. And how you do it briefly, you can take a picture of this. It will also be sent to you. Is like, what's the intention of the situation? What do you want? What's the vibe? We know that every single plant has their own vibe. Like, what are they bringing? I picked roses today. So like, we have a vibe. There's some love, there's some heart stuff going on, but like, what do you want to infuse into this? Pick your flower. You don't always have to take the flower out. You can have water sitting next to the plant and just like let it come in from there if you don't want to like do all that. Grab a bowl, put the water and the flowers in the bowl. And then from there, you're gonna let it sit. If it's a hot day, like it kind of is today in Bakersfield, you're gonna let it sit for 1 to 2 hours. Cold, overcasty day, 4 to 8, takes longer. And then you're gonna grab a jug or handy dandy little spray bottle, put it in there, fill it up halfway with the alcohol, and then you got a little situation to spray around, help you be with Rose for longer. Yes, if you can drop, if this is your first session, please drop your email to make sure we can send it out to everybody. But I'm gonna stop sharing my screen really briefly. And then I'm gonna move some stuff so folks can see. Okay. Okay. Oh, let me take away this beautiful background. Okay, can people see things? Let me see things.
Just spotlight you so that they can see.
Okay. Okay, so people can see, right? Well, so we got
Yes.
the rosy situation. Shout out to Adonis. Shout out to Adonis. He took the L, but we are winning. So these have been sitting out for most of the morning. It smells really, really good. And that I just want to say thank you so much to the roses. Thank you so much to the Rosier family. Thank you so much for this relationship that we've been building since I was like 16. You've carried me through so many different lives and relationships and grief and death and so many things. And I'm just grateful for you. And I'm grateful to continue this relationship. And I'm so glad that you have decided to work with me in this way. And I hope I continue to build relationship with you in a way that feels reciprocal and in a way that feels like life affirming for both of us. And I want to say thank you and Ashe as I make this. All right. So we're going to use this handy dandy Starbucks cup because I don't have a funnel, no shade. So we're just going to pour this in here. All of it is there. Okay, cool. Great. Thank you, friends. And I've already, and you can do it, I do it. I've already like smoked this like bottle. So I've already like blessed it and all that stuff. You can bless yours too. You can use a plant that is, you know, a blessing plant of your lineage that is sustainable and not going to kill the planet, aka like maybe we should back off the sages because our indigenous family here in the Southwest United States are having a hard time accessing their spiritual medicines. So maybe like a rosemary or copal or like cinnamons and other beautiful things. Yeah, we're gonna pour this in here really gently. You can pray while you're doing this. You can think of the intention that you're setting while you're doing this. Thank you so much. That's a little more than half. A little more. You're gonna fill up the main thing you're using. So like if this is a pretty big bottle, I forget how many ounces it is, but you're gonna fill it up halfway and then you can have another jug. I'm gonna put this in like another bottle, the rest of it. But you have like your mother jar that has all of it, especially if you make a large amount. And then you have like the main thing you're gonna be using, which has just like halfway filled up with the flower essence. And then I'm gonna use some gin today, fill it up with the rest. Shout out. And then from there, I'm just gonna pray that this is beneficial to my overall health and well-being and the health and well-being of anybody else who also comes into contact with this plant material, with this flower essence. I pray that my subtle body receives this blessing and this medicine. And I pray that again, I'm able to be in right relationship with the Rose family today, tomorrow, until I leave this earth. And hopefully my relatives who are here and my descendants that come from me are also here in right relationship with you. And I want to say thank you. Pray. And then we close it. All righty. And yeah, you just, oh no, not it don't work. And then, oh, not it don't work. Oh, Jesus, this is embarrassing. Okay, we're here. It's sprayed. And then you kind of have a whole like little situation. Oh God, that hit my eye. Then you have like a whole situation of a flower essence that you can use whenever you're feeling like you need a little zhuzh before work, before class, before a thing. You got it. And that is how we make flower essences. Do folks have any questions or any like thoughts, fifis, concerns? Not concerns, but like you get it. Oh, the chat. I'm so sorry. I did not see any of this. Oh, yes. Okay. So as we're prepping to leave, because I know we're almost at time, I want to give, sorry. We're having a pop-up in July, on July 15th. I know a lot of us are not local to the Central Valley or Kern County, so there's going to be a virtual part 2. Like, if you would like some like free heart medicine specifically, we're gonna have tinctures, oxymels, flower essences, shout out, tea blends, as well as like cocos. There might be one extra thing that I'm kind of like contemplating if I have time to make or not. But we're gonna have all of those. It's gonna be donation based. And specifically, if you or a family member is dealing with heart-related illness, that will be free because we want to make sure people have access to medicines. But yeah, this is going to be going on July 15th. Location to be determined in Bakersfield, California, though. And it'll be from 11 to 3. If it's for the virtual folks, it'll be an all day. You just sign a Google form and then I will send it out to you. Yeah. Are there any questions on that? If you want to like show up and support, you're more than welcome to. Any cues? Okay, no cues. And then lastly, we have 2 more sessions. Our next session is going to be very, very juicy. It'll be on chronic illness, disability justice, friendship, and communal care. So we're going to get deep into our like revolutionary bag and talk like how these plants like really show us like, you know, how to be with one another. Like the trees, they're all kicking underneath us all the time and they're supporting each other. So like, how can we take on that like disability justice, that communal care framework that the trees do and so many other plants do? Yeah, that'll be in June. I don't know which day, but we will post it. And yeah, with that, we're done. The session is done, unless you like have questions or, you know, want to give anything in.
So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to stop recording